think so. Enough of them. All right. We ready to roll? We're good? Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council for Monday, July 25th, 2022. I now call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Clark.
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
Here.
Councilmember Arona.
Here via Zoom.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Urick.
Here. All right. Councilmember Clark, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. Please stand, place your right hand on your heart, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we do not have any proclamations or presentations at this time, but we do have public communications. Madam Clerk, would you please read the admonition about public communications?
The council welcomes your input. At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comments first.
All right, thank you. And moving forward, I have Michael Miller. You're up.
Hi, thank you.
Please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Allen Miller.
Go ahead.
Okay, first I'd like to start with Corey McKinnon, the branch supervisor. I had some contact with her. I'm interested in some clarifications of IP addresses, how they're assigned, managed, what should or shouldn't result from certain IP information inquiries. I'm going to have more on that in a minute. I did show her a couple papers of issues that I had in other cities, and part of that is related to the reason why I'm hoping I can get some help with assistance discussing some of the sister city. I know that you guys have people that come here from your sister city, and I'm having some difficulties with the American music industry, some issues related to that, local and national and international issues that have resulted since 2012, and I didn't sign any label contracts. And now I'm dealing with pretty unusual circumstances. I have a song called Taiwan Thunderstrike that has 5 languages. I went to the Chinese consulate in LA in 2020. I resolved a border conflict between India and China at the time that was partly related to a global unity organization that an Indian celebrity lawyer started, Uma Shankar Pandey. He was on my Facebook page. He started that organization after Katy Perry went there and discussed this. They stopped their conflict when I made the suggestion that countries have the option for 2 slots. One is a government individual. At that point, China mailed seeds through Taiwan Shipping Company. My song is Taiwan Thunderstrike. So despite this, despite multiple songs related to my situation, which normally is delusional megalomania for other people, I'm having a lot of very unusual and difficult circumstances around me all the time. And hopefully maybe I can, am I finished? Hopefully maybe
Nope.
I can get some business assistance or other issues with that related to the music industry through Solvang and other legal issues related to my IP being monitored inappropriately and other difficulties in the region in Santa Barbara County related to police corruption, legal court corruption, and other things, possibly even political issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Have you checked with people helping people to see if they might be able to help you with some legal issues? They do offer that service. That's
Thank
a
you for
social
asking
service.
and pointing that out. While I was in Santa Barbara, a few people mentioned the Legal Aid Society, but what I'm dealing with is just so much bigger than that. I mean, multiple non-disclosure agreements. If I was
Right.
only going to go with an American,
Understand
Thank
that.
you.
However, you're talking about Santa Barbara and you're up here. People helping people is the people that help our valley people up here. And it's at least you have to get started somewhere. All right? Thank you, sir. Michael Baker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Michael Baker, CEO, United Boys and Girls Clubs. I just wanted to give you an update that things are going very well. With the Boys and Girls Clubs, we are ready to open again for the school year coming up. We have a wait list already, which is a good thing. We want to hopefully get more space. We're going to be working with the new superintendent to hopefully acquire more space on the campus. Where I want to get the word out is we are in desperate need of hiring, which I know is a big issue across the board everywhere. But it's a great opportunity for someone that's looking to work with children. We're looking for local folks to work in the Boys and Girls Club. So if you know of a great high school student, senior, junior, senior, or even a college student that's local, or a single parent looking for work, or anybody that's wants to work with kids, we're definitely looking for those folks to work at the Boys and Girls Clubs. If they're interested, they can contact me at mbaker@unitedbg.org. Again, that's mbaker@unitedbg.org. They send their resume. We are looking to bring people on board before the school year starts, so please spread the word and encourage you when we are open. We'd love to see all the mayor and council members attend the program and see our program in action and realize why it's one of the best kept secrets here in Solvang. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Have you checked with the high school?
We
Just to
have.
check with their guidance counselors as well as Allen Hancock to make sure it's on their websites?
We've promoted it, and we're going to continue to do that. Best way is word of mouth.
Right.
So if you know folks that are looking for work with youth, perfect job for someone that wants to go into teaching potentially.
Yeah, great.
Can I
Thank
ask a
you.
question?
Go right
Michael,
ahead.
yeah, even kids on break for college right now?
Absolutely.
You can use them for a month or two?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, and winter break and summer break. Yeah, we can use them. We can use
Just
them
roll
year-round.
right into those breaks.
We love college students.
They don't
yeah.
go to school enough as it is right now.
That's
Come on now.
Exactly. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you do for the students.
Thank you.
And lastly, I have Ed Skid. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Urick, City Council. I'm Ed Skitt, resident of the City of Solvang. I have a couple of questions first, and then I'll make my comments after if I can get my questions answered. The question is, we had an article in the paper where we are doing a water conservation, where we're requesting the residents and the commercial to roll back their water usage by 20%. Is that straight across the board for both commercial and residential?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes.
So the regulations on drought for commercial are tied to 20% reduction compared to a base year, which is 2019-2020. And then the regulations for commercial also strive for a 20% reduction, but it's based on average use of a single family home, which is 14 HCF.
Okay, the question, well, that answers the question on both. And when we say commercial, we are talking about all commercial, correct?
Correct.
The statement I'm going to be talking about is there's a lot of the commercial buildings or commercial shops in Solvang, both large and small, which in our last drought emergency did go and do their 20% reduction. They have installed their low-flow toilets, restricted the restrooms in the smaller commercials to employees only. They are not opening up to the general public. So they're going to have a very hard time meeting that 20% reduction. The other area that's going to be difficult would be for a number of the lodging establishments. They ended up going in the last drought, going in and putting in the low restriction shower heads, low restriction or low flow toilets, pulled out a bunch of their landscaping to go to drought tolerant. A number of them actually pulled grass out and put imitation grass in, and some of them have basically cut their water use by 50 to 70%. Now, the only way that a lot of these particular establishments can cut back to 20% is cut 20% less rooms, which cuts back on 20% less TOT. And it's one of these things I think somebody has to take a look at. Also, in regards to the base year, is that a number of, if you take a look at the base year, 2019, 2020, that was the beginning of the pandemic, and for a number of the businesses, the last half of that year was extremely poor, and a number of them did not get any businesses, all had very low water use. So it's something that you might want to take reevaluate, particularly for the entire commercial district. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that.
Good points.
And that's all I have for written comments. Is there anyone, Mr. Beatty?
There's one online. Oh.
Anyone in-house that would wish to speak? Okay, moving out to, is that Sheila Benedict? It is. Sheila, you're up.
Good evening. This is Sheila Benedict. I'm a Solvang resident. And the first part Ed already talked about, so I won't bother, but we are moving into this orange plan for districting voting. And according to the map that I downloaded, in this year, districts 3 and 4 will be voting, but districts 1 and 2 won't vote till 2024. And given the fact that I am in District 2, what do I do in 22? How do I vote? Do I vote generally, or not only me, but anybody in districts? I'd be very interested to find out how that is going to be handled.
We're still voting for mayor.
You're still voting for mayor right now, Sheila, which is the only one that's at large. Otherwise, I don't believe that you in your district would be voting at this time, only the ones in District 3 and 4, which are up. So at that point in 2024, is that the year?
Yes,
2024?
2024.
That's when the election would happen for folks in your district as well as in District 1.
So we don't have a vote at all in the November election if we live in districts 1 or 2.
You have a mayor vote. The mayor vote is coming
And
up.
I understand that's not going to be you.
You understand correctly.
Well, we're going to miss you.
Thank you. But you do,
And a
but,
nice replacement.
thank you.
Okay, was my comments.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully we clarified that for you.
And
You did.
1 and 2
Thank
are
you.
4-year terms anyway, so it
Right.
would always be it.
That's all I have for public comment. Moving now on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will actually start my report by just adding a little bit more to that district in discussions that the 2 council members that are, or those 2 districts that are not for vote would still be represented by 2 council members that remain on the seat at large. So Mayor Pro Tem Infante and Councilmember Arona will continue to represent the city at large in that sense until we transition to District 10 completely in 2024. So I'd like to take a moment, and if we can pull up the presentation at this point, to talk a little bit about the best ways or different ways in which you can view the council meetings. The recommended way for folks to view the council meeting is actually to go directly to our City of Solvang website. On the front page here, you will see where the arrow shows. As soon as you get to the front page, on the left there's live video. So that is a video that we control. It's through a program called Vimeo. And that is always there because it's actually a paid service that we do control. You can use that service through your computer, your smartphone, or a smart TV. Another option is to go to the YouTube, which is a free service. So sometimes they change their security, and periodically, once in 6 months, there may be an interruption in your viewing. But generally speaking, that's another backup that everybody is used to getting to. And then, of course, we have the channel 23, which is our cable local channel. I would like to remind everybody that we need to speak into the microphones, including the speakers, and we have ordered a larger or taller speaker for those tall speakers so they don't have to get on their knees when they speak in public. So that is forthcoming, but it is important to remember that these microphones are actually meant to magnify the voice here and also feed our voice into the system for folks who are remote to be able to hear us. Once again, just reminding everybody of the State of the City, which will be taking place on Wednesday, August 24th. It will be from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. It will be held at the Cork Craft House at 420 Alisal, and it's being managed through the Chamber. So anybody interested in attending will actually need to have a ticket, and those are provided through the Chamber of Commerce. Now, I'd like to take a moment once again, since it's been a while since we've looked at this process of the general plan, just to remind everybody of where this process is, where we began, and where we are here today. So we started the general plan update back in December of 2020. We worked through existing conditions and trends through the GPAC, which is the 15 volunteers from our community, and it also went through Planning Commission and council approvals. We then looked at alternative choices report and selected a desired land use to develop for the rest of the general plan. Right now, we're in the stage of preparing the plan, and we're actually in the very last stage of that. The GPAC will be very busy throughout the months of August, reviewing the remaining 4 elements. As part of that process, once all of the elements are completed, we'll be moving to environmental review, and we need all of those elements to be presented as one document for that process to begin. So throughout the process, as we have this document put together, it will be available for public review. It will also be presented to Planning Commission and the City Council as preliminary draft. And then we would be looking at adoption of the entire general plan update in winter of 2023. A couple of items to mention here is that the last workshops that were held was the housing workshop number 2. All of that input is being worked into the housing element update. The design review committee held a workshop on community design element. And we also just had a workshop on the European Plaza project concept. So to speak a little bit more to that is that we have a Downtown Plaza workshop that took place on Monday, July the 18th. It was a pretty good turnout with lots of folks gathering around the gazebo. We got good input through our staff and our consultants, but we are also continuing to seek input through this online survey. You see the cards that have been placed around town where folks can hopefully grab it at the library or other places where they go and get involved. It's a QR code to where you can go in and fill out the survey. You also have that available on our city website and then on the plan dedicated website for the general plan, which is plansolvang.com. It's also worth mentioning the process about the community design element review, and it's a very important element for the community. It is what the design review committee is utilizing for approval of their projects. What we have is our community design element, which was created in 1987, shortly after incorporation of the city. We also have the design guidelines shown on the right there, which were adopted basically by the Board of Architectural Review and which are being used by the Design Review Committee. Through this process of the general plan update, we are updating sort of both of these documents combined, which are similar, but the design guidelines have a lot more photographs and are a little bit more descriptive. So part of the recommendations will be that we will have an updated community design element which will focus on those high policy issues and really become more of a policy document. While we would be recommending that the regulatory type of language would be pulled out of the general plan update, the high-level policy document, and would actually be proposed as an amendment to municipal code, just like our sign regulations that would then be used by the Design Review Committee for their projects review. Just to mention what's happening, worth of mentioning at the different committees. The Planning Commission will be meeting on August 1st. The one project that would be going to them as a development plan review would be the 1714 Mission Drive, Market and Deli. That's a proposed development at what used to be the old bank building, which has been vacant for quite a while. At the Design Review Committee on August 18th, Solvang Senior Center Development Plan is moving forward. That would be the review of architecture, colors, etc., and which will then go to the Planning Commission. At the last meeting, the most notable project that the Design Review Committee reviewed was the old Lumberyard Hotel residential project, which now has really taken shape, and we expect that it will start going through the approval process. The Tourism Advisory Committee will be meeting on August 4th. The areas that they would be working on is continue to onboard and work with the marketing consultant, the Abbey agency. One of the things that they're working right now is surveying the Tourism Advisory Committee themselves, and then also working on a plan on how to engage the community. Another review that they would be doing is the visitor center operations and that coordination between the marketing consultant and the visitor center programs. And then they would start planning for the Yule Fest. One of the recommendations that originally the TAC had was to form a Yule Fest committee, so that would be one of the considerations for discussion. And then, of course, the marketing manager position is open, and I'm hoping that that position would be filled sometime in August. Now, I've been asked to provide some updates on projects, some questions from Mayor Pro Tem Infante. So this is not all-encompassing, but there's some updates included here today. The website redesign is in progress. It's been kicked off. We're working with Civic Plus, which is our provider. As part of that, we would be doing redesign of the website itself and its functionality, and also updating the data. So that is expected based on their project timeline to be done by November. The impact fees update is aligned with the general plan update policies and will encompass citywide strategy to facilitate desired development while meeting the city's capital improvement program funding needs to support the development. So we're looking at basing the new fees for impacts from development to be in alignment with the new policies that are coming through the general plan update. And once we have that through the RFP process, we'll onboard a consultant and update those fees to meet the needs of the capital improvement program. The emergency plans update is we've been working with the County of Santa Barbara on an update of multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, which was last updated in 2011. So I just got a note from them that they sent documents to FEMA and Cal OES, and they're in final stages of finalizing that. So once the plan is fully prepared, working with the county and all the jurisdictions in the county, that will be proposed or presented to the City Council. The emergency management plan is our internal document. County of Santa Barbara also has it, and they're our primary partner in that. That is something that they have reviewed at the emergency emergency services by emergency services director, and our plan currently meets the requirements, but it is recommended to periodically update that. So since our plan hasn't been updated since 2014, that will be moving forward for an update. It will be about a 6 months process for us to update the plan entirely and also provide training. And then we're also working on the Veterans Hall generator, and we have some progress there with working with the county. It's not approved or anything, but we've been working with the county to see if it would be a facility of interest to become basically a shelter here for the valley, in which case there would be some funding available potentially for solar and for a generator. Question?
I have a question on that. And it may have already been completed or approved. They were having issues with the bathroom over at the Vets Hall, and we're asking for help with remodel, as I recall, last year. Is that a part of this, or can that be a part of this?
So
Because
it's not.
if it's going to be a shelter, then it's probably going to need to be able to meet those needs?
It's a good question. You do already have a project approved in the capital improvement program
Okay.
to go ahead and do those updates.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know if that had been completed or not. Thank you.
So if we can get the presentation back up again, a couple more updates. Agenda management software is something that we just kicked off. It will be through PrimeGov. It would create a process for us internally to manage our agenda preparation, and it also will include a video streaming feature of itself. So it will be an additional layer of video that would be coming through that software.
Replacing what we have now?
It would be replacing the Vimeo component.
The Vimeo component, not the Channel 23 and YouTube.
No, those would be, YouTube would probably stay as a backup, and Channel 23 is the only local television that we have.
Thank you.
Next, we are continuing to move forward with the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, and one of the issues that will be coming first to you is that we need to find a solution for funding the design for this upgrade in order to be able to apply for larger grants and low financing options. So that's what we're really focusing on right now. In order to get the design, we would need to get funds from somewhere else. We're looking at options because wastewater treatment plant currently does not have a balance. We're also working on developing some additional rebate programs for the city to help the community mitigate the impacts of the drought and work with them on some solutions and strategies. A few updates on what would be moving forward with the new adopted plan and the CIP. There is a number of projects on traffic mitigation and safety. We would be working on design for the Mission Drive corridor study and working collaboratively with Caltrans on that. So that would be the study to really try to synchronize our traffic on Mission Drive. We also have pedestrian facility design project for the Freedom's Canyon to address traffic issues there. We are placing additional radar speed lights in Weiberg and Friedensburg and continue to work with Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department on traffic enforcement in that area. When it comes to parking, we'll be issuing an RFP here pretty soon to study feasibility of a parking structure. And then we'll also be coming to you with some ideas for just potential quick fixes on parking management recommendations.
If I may, a parking structure study with the end goal of giving us an estimate of what it's going to cost, what it's going to take. What is the purpose of the study?
Correct. So the scope would be to study how much it's going to cost, what designs would work best for the city. We'll include in there potential partnership of public-public, private-public to see if there's any options there. But yes, it would be studying all of those options.
Thank you.
And then, of course, there's the Vets Hole ADA upgrades here. We're hoping to get the project moving forward quickly and hopefully before the senior center begins their construction and moves into the Vets Hole as well. Here, just showing some exciting projects for the parks that are moving forward. For the Solvang Park, we had already completed the residing the new lower painted gazebo. We will be moving forward with re-roof of the gazebo in October after the Danish Days. There will be a little bit of a break between all of the events that happen at the Solvang Park. At the HCA, we have quite a few updates. We have the tables in the Area D, the pump track.
Pump track.
That's misspelled again. Sorry. What is that? Sorry about that.
It's coming from wastewater.
The pickleball court, final touches, the trail improvements, skate park repair, and then, of course, the largest one is going to be the HCA playground update, which would potentially modify or replace the structure that you see here in the picture. So that is something that we really want to get some community input on. So we would be reaching out to our users of recreation, and others to get some feedback on what kind of features would be desired for them for this playground upgrade. Advanced calendar for August 2022 is, we have a few items that are worth mentioning. There was a request to have a discussion on customer satisfaction survey type poll options for the city operations. So I'll have some ideas for you there and would be looking for policy direction. There's the SB County Fire request to consider new fire station location. Once again, we'll be looking for your policy direction and an answer on that. Since if their potential request for parking lot 5 would actually be hindering some of the projects that we already have going in terms of our improvements to that lot. Parking in lieu regulations policy discussion will be coming back at the second meeting in August. And then we'll be bringing to you the results of the Downtown Plaza Community Workshop to get some policy direction with you on what type of scope to include in continuation of the general plan update, which would also be studied through the environmental review. That concludes my presentation. It's great to be here in person today. I'm sorry I wasn't available last time and was online due to COVID, but it's great to be here today in person.
Any final comments or questions?
If I may, first
may.
off, thank you. That's what I asked for, and I appreciate the project update, and I'd like to recommend that we do that at least quarterly, so that the public, the residents, and we get to see the status of all of the projects that we have going on. I keep getting lost, sorry. So this helps me personally a lot to know what we've accomplished and what we're planning to accomplish. So thank you.
Quick question, are either you and or Roger going to be attending that webinar tomorrow related to?
Probably both.
Probably both of you. So the webinar that's going to be there tomorrow is kind of related to your question. It's going to actually let us know what funds are available for the Regional Community Emergency Center. So just, all right, thank you for being there. I may not have to be. All right, any final questions, City Manager? Moving on to council comments. Any comments or questions? You don't remember?
You go first.
Does anybody have any? Okay, I guess I'll start then with mine. And all right, starting off just with the food bank. They weren't actually able to give me any numbers, so I'll go with what was here on July 5th, which is what they're now considering kind of the baseline that they've been servicing out there, which was 167 households, individuals about 675. So it was up a little bit last Tuesday, but that's about what the average has been for the last month. Moving on to the San Ynez Valley Library community. So for Solvang Library, the summer reading program will be ending on July 30th. The last event in July is the Ice Cream Social, which will be hosted by the Friends of the Library of San Ynez Valley, Saturday, July 30th, on the lawn right there at Solvang's Library at 3 p.m. Some of the events coming up for August will be outdoor story time, which is going to be every Wednesday at 10:30 under the sycamore tree. Bring a blanket. The Memory, Coffee, and Compassion every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. That's a support group for those dealing with memory issues and cognitive disorders in the family, and that's held outdoors on the Solvang Library patio on second Thursdays. That's going to be perfect for our Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry. Solvang Library's online book club for kids, Wednesday, August 17th and Wednesday, August 31st at 4 p.m. It's for readers 8 through 11 years old. You can register to receive a free book, and you register at the link for the online meetings. It meets twice a month, and those are the two dates that they have for August 17th and August 31st at 4 p.m. So those are some news from the library. Last week attended Santa Barbara County Association of Governments meetings. probably one of the big news that came out was that Congressman Carbajal was able to secure $16 million for Santa Barbara County for community projects of federal funding, of which $7 million will be going for the Highway 101 Carpinteria to Santa Barbara project. That's really a significant amount to help out with that down there. San Marcos Pass at the Cold Spring Bridge, that construction has completed, so there's actually no more fencing up along that area there. Interesting to see that this morning when I went to work. And I think that was all I had for, that's all I had for Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. Moving on, movies in the park coming up. The next one will be Friday, August 5th. It will be Jungle Cruise. Movies begin at 7:30. And just a reminder for all businesses that serve alcohol, there is the requirement, a mandatory certification process that must be completed for all servers and managers by August 31st of this year. The training will be in Solvang at the Lansby on Thursday, August 4th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. You have to register to do that. More information can be had about that from the Chamber of Commerce. There's also a Valley-wide chamber mixer that will be hosted by Cayenne at the Ranch Thursday, August 4th at 6 p.m. Cayenne at the winery at the Ranch is on Highway 246, and any donations will be given to the St. Inez High School football boosters. Again, we have our Solvang State of the City, Wednesday, August 24th. That is going to be at the Cork Craft House from 11:30 to 1:30. And you have to purchase tickets for that. You need to RSVP. Music in the Park this coming Wednesday, July 27th, 5 to 8. It's actually every Wednesday, but this coming Wednesday will be the next one coming up. And I believe that's all I had for kind of PSAs. One thing I did want to ask all of you, as far as council, there was some information coming down related to the California Hospitality United Coalition, and they're looking to help out the hotel and hospitality industry, which for us is huge, given our TOTs that we have here. And there is some new bills that are going to be coming through, and I'll probably be forwarding those to you related to the hospitality and hotel industry specifically, about the uses for your hotels if they become empty. And the state is now trying to push homeless shelters for the hotels that are not being used. And there's a Senate bill and some other stuff that's trying to get pushed through. I just wanted to see if there was any consensus on something like that we would be kind of not for that. That's,
Just wait for the next recession and most of the hotels will be empty.
there you go. Anyway, that's all I have for comments. And Councilmember
Oh,
Clark?
the only thing I wanted to mention is I just wanted to publicly thank Father Bobby, the pastor at Mission Santa Ynez, who is departing for other responsibilities within the Capuchin Church, or the Capuchin Order at Old Mission Santa Ynez. He's done the last 2 or 3 invocations here, been very supportive of what the city has done, been very generous with the missions property with the city, and he's going to be greatly missed. So I just wanted to shout out to Father Bobby at Mission Santa Ynez, who's also my pastor.
Is this his last month?
Yes, he's Friday, I think is the
Friday,
last day.
yeah.
And we get Father Michael will be taking over, and as a representative of the city, I'm looking forward to chatting with him and working with him for anything he needs and anything he can do for us, etc.
Right.
It's not the Father Michael that was here 8, 9, 10 years ago. It's a different Father Michael. I don't know his last name. But
Okay.
I'm looking forward to working with him as well.
Well, I would reiterate, yes, Father Bobby will be missed. He's been a great advocate for all things Solvang.
He has.
And a lot of different things, so thank you, Father
you.
Bobby.
Mhm.
Moving on to the consent items. Madam Clerk, would you please read items from the consent agenda?
Consent is designed for routine administrative city matters and is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak on consent items during the public communications portion of this agenda.
All right, we won't read those, but is there any council members wishing to pull any items from the consent item? Otherwise, if not, is there a motion to,
I'll make a motion for the consent agenda as it is.
is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
Yes.
Councilmember Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Great. Moving on, no public hearings. Moving on to regular business items. Item number 5. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Agreement with M&S Engineers for the city's Facilities Program Assessment Master Plan. Approve the agreement with M&S Engineers, Inc. for the City Facilities Program Assessment and Master Plan for the amount not to exceed $84,937 for the term July 1, 22 through June 30, 2023, and authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city.
Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Council. So this item was one of the items that was moved forward from consent agenda from the last agenda, so it's appearing in front of you as a business item. Just one clarification that I would like to make before I hand it over to our Public Works Director, Roger Olds, for further presentation is that we do not currently have a city facilities program assessment and master plan. So that is why this work program is moving forward. It was part of the CIP project and the budget was approved as part of the budget. Roger, if you'd like to present.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Zena. Can we put the presentation up? There you go. So this is the presentation for the City Facilities Program Assessment and Master Plan. That's the next slide. There we go. So the recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city a contract with M&S Engineers, Inc. for the study and preparation of the city's facilities maintenance program and master plan. So just quick and easy here. Just some bullet points. This plan is part of the CIP Capital Improvement Program, and it was on last year's, and we rolled it over into this year's. We've asked for a couple of proposals from our engineering on-call, and we received 2. We're proposing to award it to M&S Engineers. This plan will assess the city's current facilities, what our needs are, and then what our future needs are going out about 30 years. So it involves some interviews with city officials and city staff, and then trying to figure out what the future holds for us, and what our facilities needs would be. And then we've added to the scope an assessment of the current city facilities, not only to develop our maintenance program, which is currently we've been just going from from one fire to the next. We fix a toilet here, we fix a faucet there, but there's no real maintenance program where we're doing active and routine maintenance. And then also getting this program together, it will also allow us to assess what our staffing needs are, and not only for new hires but also for trainings. What is the best bang for our buck as far as getting someone trained that is a current staff member so that we don't have to go out and bring in a plumber. We have someone who's trained to do routine plumbing type work. The projected budget for this project was $70,000, and the balance of $14,937 will be drawn from the citywide facilities budgets, because we are going to be developing and moving our facilities maintenance work forward with this program. So I feel comfortable with working within that budget too. So we're not asking for any budget adjustments at this time. We'll be able to work within our current budget amount. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions of the staff report? Mayor Pro
Yes.
Tem
Thank
Infante,
you.
go ahead.
I looked at the CIP and I can't find this. You said it was approved on the capital improvement project. I can see different facilities assessments on there, but I couldn't find anything in the CIP that said that it was a facilities master plan.
Okay. Well,
So I'm confused a little bit.
looks like we're digging through it now, but
Is that because it was rolled over?
yeah.
I
It
looked
was
at
on
the.
last year's and we rolled it up.
But it was rolled
It-
over,
it-
it should have been in both of them then, right?
It's under, let me get the page here.
It's under Public Works Studies, I
It's
believe.
under Public Works Studies, page 422 of today's agenda that includes the final adopted budget.
There it is.
Go ahead, make me look silly, see if I can.
God, I'm used to it. Not you.
Mission Drive, wait a minute, okay. All right. So this shows on this particular document, but I went back to the approved CIP and I can't find it.
So that would be the page 422, that's approved CIP.
That is from that but this, okay. So I went back to the one that says 22 and 23, and it's not, I can't find it there. So this is confusing to me, because that was a complete, let's see if I brought it with me.
So the CIP projects have not changed since it was presented to you
Yeah,
last.
I've got it here.
And
Okay, I'll accept it's there. Now, the other question though is what I had seen looking through the capital improvement project that's online that I pulled up was a number of other facilities assessment plans. Does this supplant all of those, replace all of those? Or are there separate ones?
I'm not sure what other ones you're talking about, but
I saw one for, big plates in the street, what do you call them? Manhole covers. There was another one for, there was 2 or 3 of them in there. I forget what they were. I wish I had brought that with me.
this is, Councilman Infante, this is for the city facilities and open spaces, the buildings that we're in, the restrooms, the city hall, the annex
So
building.
not the infrastructure
Not-
facilities?
Not the roadway or the infrastructure. No, it does not include that.
All right, that's where I got off. All right, thank you.
Can I just ask a question related to, so you go to 421 on the agenda, and it shows a summary sheet, Public Works Department, 2022 to 23, 150 for the budget. CIP, page 421. And you go down to the studies,
so there
the-
is,
so the budget right now is saying we have 150 budgeted for a number of different studies, all for this coming year. Because there's transit, Title 6. Title 6, yeah.
That's transit related as well. Actually, it's equal opportunity.
so yes, page 423, the studies listing starts on page 422. 423 at the bottom has the total of the studies for 22, 23 on the Public Works, and
Right.
that's 150 in total,
Right.
which is what is shown on page 421, summary page.
My question is are all of those, because it does say the plan update is needed to comply with federal and state funding requirements. Those are going to need to be, so those are basically mandated to be completed for this fiscal year.
for the,
For those studies like the ADA paratransit plan, the Title VI
yeah.
Civil Rights Plan?
I could certainly check with our our transit consultant. That I know we just did kick off our short-range transit plan just this past couple weeks, and so once we get through that, which will be presented to council later on this year, then we'll be jumping on to our next one. So I don't believe that they are required to be done to stay compliant, but I don't think it has to be done tomorrow. I think we're a little bit ahead of the game, but we're on track to stay compliant.
And then the other one study is the Mission Drive Pedestrian and Vehicle Corridor Study.
Yeah.
So do we know if that's going to be costing us any more than the 55 that's budgeted for right now?
We do not. We're going to be putting an RFP out for that probably within the next month. I've already been contacted by a few consultants that are interested in it. So based on our scope and that we put out, we'll get a scope and fee, and we can certainly negotiate it down. If it comes in really expensive, we can rein it back in a little bit as far as how much outreach we need to do.
Is that going to correspond with our general plan, traffic and circulation element?
It's,
Shouldn't that have-
generally speaking, yes. I mean, you haven't seen the final or even a draft final
Right.
document for the general plan update, but the policies that are being developed as part of that look at parking. So, yes, eventually the outcomes of the study, we just come in a little bit ahead of the general plan, but we want to just start getting some ideas because you already have those goals adopted as part of your goals for the financial plan. Generally speaking, yes, it will be aligned and in support of the policies that are being developed through the general plan update.
But is this going to be money needing to be spent in addition to what we already have allotted for the general plan? And that's
So
supposed to
it's-
include a traffic study.
It's completely different. So the general plan traffic element looks at really big picture. It looks at your roads in entirety for the entire
Right.
area of Solvang and ties it. The analysis would tie any changes in zoning regulations, which would then be studied in terms of what type of impact that would have on traffic. Parking is part of all of that circulation. However, this particular project would be specific in response to what you as City Council have adopted on February 26th, telling us that one of your goals is to start looking at solutions for parking. So this is the beginning step of that. We will be issuing an RFP, and we'll be studying this potential solutions of where a parking study might be, how much it might cost, what kind of, once again, partnerships we might be able to develop in order to fund that structure and to partner with private or public agencies for that. So that's the scope. If once we go through the study, the results will be brought back to you as council for your policy decision to move forward and what the next steps would be and whether there would be any project moving forward to actually move forward with any type of structure or not.
Because with that, we might be able to get some Caltrans, like SB-CAG money, to help out with that.
That would be nice.
That's the
that it's
intent of
Mission
this study
Drive.
is to coordinate with Caltrans, get Caltrans support on what we do propose so that we can go after that sort of money and see if we can get some support from Caltrans, SB-CAG, and the like.
Great.
Try to improve circulation through Mission Drive.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions with that? Seeing our questions here, do we go out for public comment on this? And is there anyone wishing to speak on this particular item? No one here, no one out on Zoom. So we'll bring it back for final comments and/or a motion.
I kicked this one down the road, and I will stop it and say I authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city the contract with MNS Engineering.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
Yes.
Councilmember Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Moving on to item number 6. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Annual City Tree Services Contract with West Coast Arborists. Approve the third amendment to the agreement with West Coast Arborists, Inc. for annual street tree maintenance in the amount not to exceed $120,000 and to extend the term to June 30th, 2023, and authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city.
Thank you. So this is one of the annual contracts, and I will let our Public Works provide the details on it.
Thank you, Zena. So we can get the presentation up. Okay, so this is the presentation for West Coast Arborists, contract amendment number 3. So recommendation that City Council authorize city manager to execute on behalf of the city a contract extension with West Coast Arborists at WCA for annual city tree services. So the original contract was executed January of 2015 through January 2020, so it was about 5 years. Then in 2020, the contract was informally extended, and then as you might recall, back in January, council formally extended the contract for the remainder of fiscal year 21-22, and the rates were held for that were established for the 2020-2022 contract extension that was informal. We proposed a 1-year contract extension for fiscal year 2022-2023. We did receive revised rates that increase there's a lot of light items on there, but generally they are increasing by about 5%. So from a couple years ago, 2020, increased about 5% for their costs. So the annual overall contract amount is increasing from $70,000 to $120,000 to reflect our current tree service budget. And our street, I think previously the contract was just slated just for our street tree budget, which was at $70,000 every year. And so what we are trying to do is we're trying to extend that to also, they do service not just our street trees. They do service our parks trees, our property trees, open spaces, that sort of thing. One of the things we really want to get them out to do is help us out with Hans Christian Andersen Park. There's been many years of deferred maintenance out there. We've had the second tree this year collapse under its own weight. Some of these trees are too large for our staff to be able to get to, and West Coast Arborists has the men and equipment to be able to do this sort of service. So it is going to take us a couple years just to catch up, but I mean it's a combination of not a whole lot of water on these trees. They need to be pruned to be healthy, and then also they're just the deferred maintenance. They just haven't been pruned. So it's and these are even trees that are not on our substantial tree listing that was brought to our attention, and I'll get to that in a second. So our tree inventory. The tree inventory was last updated in 2016, and there's about 3,000 trees, and those are not only street trees, those are also city property trees. All the city properties have listed trees. There were some that, some of it is a bit repetitive. The addresses are repetitive, but it does appear, looking at the tree data was downloaded from Arbor Access, which is a GIS program that West Coast Arborists operates, and they allow us access to. And I was reviewing the list with the visual, and they do seem to generally line up. It does, I mean, looking at all the dots on the screen, I can't imagine there's 3,000 dots, and I kind of counted some of the neighborhoods, just cursory, but it's close. There were some addresses, particularly in Alisal, that seemed repetitive, and you know, how on earth are there 200 trees on that one property frontage? And those happen to be, I think the address is listed improperly, incorrectly. Right. Some of them are South Alisal, out by Alisal Ranch. Yeah. There's two properties in particular.
658.
Yeah, 658 and 701. 658 at 212 trees,
Yeah,
and 751 South Alisal at 152.
yep,
So there's, but those are all on South Alisal that are just fronting really long stretches of the single property, which is Alisal Ranch.
right.
And then another one that I noticed is 131 trees were noted on various addresses at Friedensburg Way, which I found is a road.
Yes.
But it's mislabeled, it should be Friedensburg Canyon. And so
Okay.
those addresses are wrong. So there is probably some work that needs to be done on the database. Yes, a bit. And we're not proposing to completely update the tree inventory this fiscal year. The charge to assess and update the trees went up from $3 a tree to $3.15 a tree, but we're looking at about $10,000 to update our entire tree inventory. But it is recommended by our JPIA to update our tree inventory. So that's something that we're probably looking at, maybe adjust the budget for next year to do. Because we do want to update our inventory, make sure that we all are in alignment. Now, having the proper inventory is not generally going to affect how we operate when we bring West Coast Arborists in to come and trim some trees. We're going to tell them, hey, typically how we do it is we say, hey, we want you to trim, this street and that street, and they get to those, and they do those streets, and they bill us for the work that they do. However, there are some, again, based on the tree inventory, there are some trees that, maybe city crews have taken out that has not been updated in there. There are some other trees that have been planted by developers that has not been updated in there. So there is a need to do this, and we should be doing it a little more often than every 6 years. But the time is probably not this year. We're going to try to hit the ground running with our efforts. However, if we get to fall and it looks like we're not going to be hitting our budget mark, we might come back and reconsider that and utilize the contract that we have with them, and then stay within our current budget. And maybe that is something that we can do. But we definitely want to do it within the next year or two.
Great, I appreciate you looking into that. I did know, because I was trying to figure that same thing out, so I went back and checked South Alisal,
Yeah.
and it looks like that whole line. Did want to mention, though, on page 61 and 62, which shows Alisal Road Park 1, all the way up through 19, it does go in order, but starting at Park, quote-unquote, 19, it lists 111 trees total, but it goes every other number. So instead of 19, 20, 21, it goes 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 29, 31, all the way up through 111.
I can
Yes.
double check that one, but I know that there was an area in there with a lot of trees that is the open space down there
Right.
just before the river,
Yeah.
that park area.
Yeah,
That open space area has quite a few trees in there as well.
right. But the way they numbered it, it was every other number instead of following it in sequence.
Okay.
So just that, but I know that was, well, I was the one that wanted to double check this. It just didn't seem quite right, so.
Was that surprising, Robert?
satisfied.
I never knew that.
So, that was my questions and comments.
Okay,
I appreciate you doing that, Roger.
I have a couple, if I
Go ahead.
may. First, I don't understand what this inventory actually says. What is grid/routine trim? What's grid? What's it going to do? What is this function?
I'll answer succinctly and just say I don't know what the grid means. I do know that they have our trees in zones. There are 4 different zones throughout the city. They do have on the arbor access. You can click on it. It shows you the tree. It shows you what condition it is, the species. It even shows a picture of it from ground level. Kind of like Google Earth type thing. So the grid, I'm not really sure what that means. The routine trim is what the recommended annual service is on that tree.
Well, that brings up the next question. every house on the street I live in is listed in this. Are you doing private individual trees for residences?
No.
But they're all listed and it says grid / routine trim.
Mine's not listed.
Yeah. Yours is on it?
No.
Oh, yours isn't? Oh, mine is. My house is on it. And by the way, that one of the trees it lists, or two of the trees it lists aren't there anymore. I haven't been there for 5
There
years.
should be an investigation about this.
I think we should.
So if the
But my
trees,
question is-
aren't there, then the update will take those trees out of the inventory.
But why are they even there? These are it's not just my street. I looked at several of the addresses. There's residences throughout the city whose trees are listed on this tree list that they're supposed to be trimmed, apparently. So this gives me a great deal of doubt about this estimate. I mean, if the estimate's based on this inventory, I'm a little nervous.
Are you concerned about the city paying for tree trimming on private property?
I wish they would. It'd save me a lot of money.
I understand that, but I mean,
But yes, I mean, first off, there's a whole inventory of what they say they're gonna do, and I would say half of this, if not more, is on private residential
but
property.
isn't it just saying what the tree needs versus what we're going to?
No,
pay for it?
that's.
Yes, we're not gonna be able to trim all 3,000 trees with the budgeted amount of money.
Well, I would hope we wouldn't
We're
be
not
stepping
even
on
close.
private property to trim trees either.
Yeah, no, that's correct as well. This is, the trees when it lists an address, that is a street tree, or it's supposed to be a street tree, which is a city-owned tree right along right along the street frontage. And
Even in my house. The
okay.
tree in front of my house is a city tree.
It may be. We
Maybe
can
in
take
the
a look
city
at it.
easement of the road.
Yeah, it would be in a city.
There's
tree.
no sidewalk, so how do we determine what's city and what's me?
I'm happy to take a look at the map and we can see if it's on, and if it is in our database, it's a tree that we have, that is ours, it's listed, and we trim it. We don't trim it every year. That's why there's four zones.
I've lived in that house 9 years and nobody's ever trimmed a tree in my house.
Well, that's good, because then that means the city's not paying for it.
Right.
It means your responsibility. So
It is,
maybe
and
you
I've
just
been
put a
trimming.
caveat at the end saying, yes, I approve this as long as this is not going on anybody's private property.
But that's my question.
It's not separate.
Okay, it's
But
in the
half of this is
it's in the
private property.
nomenclature then.
Huh?
It's in the nomenclature then.
It says maintenance. I've got house, tree, species, I don't know what DBH is, and height and maintenance. Okay? And there's a private residence there on First Street. They're all through here. This thing is just,
It'll be updated next year, if not sooner.
Yep.
Which is why I brought it to the attention.
and so what you're saying is you're gonna ignore this tree inventory and tell them what to do manually.
We're not gonna ignore the tree inventory. It's a list of, it's our inventory that's 6 years old, that kind of lists what the trees that we own or that we think we own. But when we will ask them, the $70,000 in our budget for, or $75,000 for street tree trimming is really about 3 to 3.5 weeks worth of work. And we can do maybe a quadrant of the city for that amount. There's a lot of trees, and these crew. I mean, we do try to trim some of them in-house. I mean, our crews were out there last week in a park out at HCA trimming back one of the trees. And I know that a couple weeks ago we were down by the river in the neighborhood over there. Trimming some of the street trees, and as for our crews. So, it's not that we're ignoring the list, it's that we don't do every single tree on the list every year.
Or every 6 years, or 9 years.
Yeah, I have 2 of my neighbors' trees are on here too, but I don't know what the city would never touch a private property tree.
No, we don't.
And okay.
We wouldn't have the right to.
Correct.
We can't-
So is this a
can't.
wording issue we're dealing with right now?
Well, that was my question is a tree, how far off the curb does a tree have to be before it's my personal one or it's in city right away?
I think the answer is, unfortunately, it depends, because under the code, street trees are trees that are within the right-of-way. And so on various streets throughout history, the right-of-way is probably different dimensions throughout the city. And you may have your property without sidewalks, for example, I think you said.
Right.
Right-of-way that extends into your yard, making that tree that's on the edge of the yard a street tree under the code. Now, if it's a tree that's closer to your house, that's providing shade to the house in the front yard, it's outside the right-of-way in all likelihood, and not a street tree. So one of the reasons that these trees may exist on this list is because they live in the right-of-way. And though it may look like your front yard, if you went and looked at the property records, 3 feet of your front yard probably is city right-of-way. And in those cases, the city has the right to trim the trees to avoid hazards to pedestrians, to avoid hazards to vehicles on the street, those kinds of issues. So that may be the reason that there are a lot of, it seems to be sort of over-inclusive.
Yeah, over-inclusive. That's a good word for it.
So if you lived in Santa Monica, somebody could put a tent in your front yard.
Yeah?
It's city property.
Oh.
All right, we'll bring it back to what's at hand. Do we have any other comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Take it out for
Well, wait a second, the increase is 5%, but inflation's 9.1, so actually the price is less.
The increase is.
Over
is
2020, the increase is
5%,
5% up.
Yep.
and Inflation's 9.1, so it's actually less than inflation. So it's a deal.
Yep. That's part of the reason why we didn't go out for RFP, because we realize that if we go out and we do get a competitive market, we might end up with higher pricing.
And I jest, but yeah, you're right, correct, makes sense.
Any final comments? Taking it out for public comment? Anyone wishing to speak? I don't have any speaker slips. Seeing none, we'll bring it out back. Maybe Zoom? Anybody on Zoom wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, bring it back for final comments and/or I will entertain a motion. And I guess, because I was the one that wanted it, I will, what the heck?
Do you have to recuse yourself?
No. I was trying to find what the recommendation was. I authorize the city manager to make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city contract extension with West Coast Arborists for annual city tree services. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante,
Yes.
Councilmember Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Moving on to item number 7. Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Annual sidewalk grinding contract with California Grinding. Approve Amendment 1 to the agreement with California Concrete Grinding LLC for city sidewalk inspection, grinding, and repair for the additional amount not to exceed $46,000, and to extend the term to December 31st, 2022, and authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city.
Sirs, report.
This is another one of the annual contracts, and our Public Works Director will present.
Thank you, Zena. So this is the annual contract, request for contract extension for California Concrete Grinding LLC. So the recommendation is to authorize city manager to execute on behalf of the city a contract extension with California Concrete Grinding LLC for survey, inspection, grinding, and repair of city-owned sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and other pedestrian pathways. So background and discussion, California Concrete Grinding has been working for us since 2012 is what the history that I saw. And they survey quarterly and they do quarterly surveys, and then they grind down once a year. Any concrete flat work that is within city right-of-way that is grindable. Some locations, it's just too much. You know, you can only grind down so far before you end up in dirt. They give that information to us, they provide that in our survey, but they do grind down. Now, due to staff availability, through, COVID and just, real kind of a tough labor market these days, the grinding has not occurred since the winter of 2021. So I did meet with them, try to find out, hey, just try to get a story. I'm still relatively new to the city, trying to figure out, hey, what's your program? How do you do this? How do you guys work? I want to get these lists and these inventories, which they did send to me, because I'm looking to take these inventories and also create some capital projects out of them as well. So we met with them, and we did reach an agreement. They offered to hold the current pricing from the previous contract to do the grinding that is covered from last year to the beginning of this year as well. So they did offer that because they want to stay on our good graces, and they do understand, they didn't do the work, we didn't pay them for the work, but they still want to do the work that they were supposed to have done over this past year. So we did agree to that. That's why we're only extending for 6 months. So the proposed contract extension will last through December 2022, and the proposed contract is $46,000, which includes the grinding of an 18-month backlog of the grinding that need to be done for about 1.5 years worth of concrete grinding, and then survey work for the next 2 quarters. And how they do the survey, the city is split up into quadrants, and then the downtown, every time they survey the downtown. So the downtown will get surveyed twice over the next 6 months, and then 2 quadrants of the city will be surveyed. So the current concrete budget for concrete grinding is $40,000. We propose to utilize the streets and repair maintenance budget if it's necessary for the remainder $6,000, if that does become necessary once they grind everything down, and if it does come to that. We do have about $45,000 in the current budget for our streets and sidewalks repair and maintenance budget, so we can dip into that a little bit to do this work. So we do not need any additional funding at this point for any budget adjustments. So that's what the proposal is, and then at that time we will then at the conclusion of the contract in December, that's when we will consider whether we either extend the contract again or we go out for an RFP and see if we can. That'll be a decision we make based on what the market's doing and whether they've actually been able to come in and do the work they've said they're going to do. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
My only question, I don't remember, and I'm just curious, why was this pulled off the consent agenda to make an agenda item?
I did because I didn't feel like it was exactly lining up with what we had for our budget.
Okay.
So we're showing a budget item for the year, fiscal year ending next June for $40,000, and yet we're only extending this for 6 months for $46,000.
I remember that.
That part doesn't line up to me. You had mentioned that they'd only done 1 survey for the last year.
They've done 3 surveys over the last year. The last time they
3.
ground was we paid the invoice for the grinding in March of 2021. So I'm not exactly sure when that was, but I know they invoiced us and we paid them. It was in the $25,000 range or so for grinding.
Okay.
Back in March of 2021.
That's what I just want. I just wanted to get a clarification on that, so.
And that's the way things are supposed to work. I get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to remember.
A question, please, just out of curiosity. Let's go back to trees. If a tree pulls a sidewalk up, do these guys fix the sidewalk?
Maybe.
Sometimes.
If the sidewalk is excessively lifted up, the sidewalk is typically about just less than 4 inches thick. So if the tree is lifted up incredibly, they may grind it. If it's lifted up half an inch or an inch, they can grind that edge down. They don't grind the whole sidewalk down, but they grind the edge down so that it's not a trip hazard. That's the whole intent of the grinding.
Right.
But the unfortunate thing is the tree roots don't go away, and then
things like
Next year, you got to grind it again.
Well, I believe it did,
You know, you
I
grind
believe,
it.
looking at the scope, it did say grinding and concrete repair.
Yeah.
So that was the question. If it was necessary to repair it, do they repair it, or does it somebody else do it?
These guys do not do a full-on concrete repair.
Okay.
What they do for some of the paver locations, in our downtown, they might pull out the pavers and grind down and then put the pavers back. Yeah, they do
Thank
that
you.
sort of work as well.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, we're gonna keep the 40,000 as our budget line item, but it could end up costing us 46.
Well, the contract is for 46. 40,000 was specifically for this contract set aside, but we also have other funds within the budget that's just for streets maintenance. So we are saying we'll manage it within the budget. So the total contract is 46. We are doing it for 6 months because we want to make sure that this work actually takes place. So there may not be any grind in the last 6 months, but we want to get this going since obviously there's been some delays.
Okay, all right, that's all I wanted to just clarify. Thank you. Any other questions? I got mine answered, so we'll take it out for public comment right now. Anyone wishing to speak on this particular item? Not today. All right, take it back and let's see, what page is that? 101.
I'll move.
Go
I'll
ahead.
move that we authorize city manager to execute on behalf of the city a contract extension with California Concrete Grinding for the survey, inspection, grinding, and repair of city-owned sidewalks.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
Yes.
Councilmember Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 8. Madam Clerk, would you please read that title?
Contracts time extension with Minter Harnish for general plan update. Approve Amendment 3 to the agreement with Minter Harnish LP for general plan update consulting services to extend the term to June 30th, 2023, and authorize the city manager to execute on behalf of the city.
Okay, so this contract is only an extension of time rather than an extension of scope or dollar amounts. This is the large contract for the general plan update that we talked about a little bit earlier today. There was a couple of amendments done to it. Some of it had to do with Spanish translation and some outreach materials. The last addition was addition of the housing element, which allows us to process the housing element update, which is required. There are requirements and they're time sensitive to submit it to the state. And we are doing that alongside with all of the rest of the elements as one comprehensive general plan update. So that was the last change. We are asking for an extension of the contract timeline to go through the end of this fiscal year. As I mentioned earlier today, the work or the approval process of the general plan update itself is estimated to be in winter of 2023. Probably around February timeframe, but there will be some additional work continuing on as that general plan update and the housing element is submitted to the state. We need to make sure that our element is accepted by the state, so the consultants will continue to do some additional work after you're actually adopted. So this would just bring us in line with the timeline for the project as we stand today, and there's no additional dollar amounts that we're asking for or any changes to scope.
Are there any questions?
Excuse me, yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. One of the reasons I had questioned this, and I'm looking for it right now, apparently Minna Harnish used a group called AirSage to do some work associated with identifying phones, and it gave us some pertinent data about tourism, I believe. What I didn't understand was why that contract was with the city and not with Minna Harnish, and was signed by Zena with no attorney review.
That was a simple contract of $10,000, which was separate and discrete in scope. It was for the scope of work to do some analysis for us as part of analysis of our tourists and tracking that cellular data.
Right.
So it was a contract directly between the city and the AirSage company that offers this service. It was useful data for both the process of economic element update as well as our marketing efforts. And part of the agreement with that, when we kind of started diving into the scope of how we would really approach the economic element update working with a subcontractor under Mintier Harnisch, we realized that this type of data would be beneficial, so we negotiated, and I think that's why this document is part of this whole mix, is because we negotiated as part of the first amendment that the consultant would contribute $5,000 to it, and then the city would contribute $5,000 to it. So we processed it through contracting mechanism directly with the city, but half of that money was contributed basically from our regional budget for the economic element update, which is why we see that reduction there. And then 5,000 was for the city to also benefit our marketing efforts. It's allowable by purchasing guidelines that you have adopted, which are per scope, per contractor. And for $10,000, we don't require any competitive quotes or an RFP.
Well, no, I understand. It says 12,000 first off. But, well, I'm sorry, there was a $2,000 discount, wasn't there? So it did come out to 10,000. But this was a contract, huh?
What page are you?
This is page 189. But if you go back to the prior page, you can see where Ms. Bradford, the city manager, signed the contract with AirSage, and there was no attorney review, which bothers me a little bit. And I did not understand why it wasn't part of the Mintner Harnisch contract and why it came directly to us. The explanation now makes some sense to me. Thank you. So we get to maintain the data that they derived under this contract?
Correct, yes, it's our data.
And can use it at our will. It's not a Mintner Harnisch. That's why it came directly to us.
Correct, yes.
All right. That was what I was looking for, an explanation. And I get a little nervous when the attorney doesn't review our contracts. It's just me.
That's fine. That's good. That's good.
That's all my comments. Thank you.
I had one going back to the staff report in the discussion, second paragraph. I just wanted to clarify, the project timeline is to have general plan update prepared and presented to Planning Commission and the City Council in the winter of 2023. Now, maybe I'm wrong and it's semantics, but the winter of 2023 would be like November of 2023, and we're only extending this until June 30 of 2023.
I suppose that could be semantics. What it means is that it's really going to be in January, February timeframe and not in December.
Okay.
Given the 3 months of winter.
fall.
That's true.
And March
It's
is
the
spring.
fall festival, yeah. So, okay. That was the reason why I wanted to clarify that, so. Think we both got our questions
Yeah, I
answered?
think we got our questions
Okay.
answered. Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody?
No.
Take it out for public comment at this time. Dennis is getting better about covering his mouth even, so I can't even see.
He's laughing at us.
All right. Bringing it back. Nobody on Zoom either, so for the final time, any final comments and/or I'll take a motion.
I'll move we approve the third amendment of the Mintner Harnisch General Plan Update Consulting Services to extend the time to June 30 of 2023.
Is there a second? I'll second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
Yes?
Councilmember Arona.
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Euring.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Moving on to item number 9. Madam Clerk, would you please read that into the record?
Budget presentation and adopted fiscal year 22-24 financial plan presentation. Per council request, receive presentation on the adopted fiscal year's 22-24 financial plan and budget process.
All right.
Staff report.
Thank you, Council. This is an item that was requested by Council at the last meeting. I would just like to walk once again through financial plan development process. Please feel free to stop me and ask any questions as we go through. As any items may be of interest to you to revisit. We start the budget process for a 2-year financial plan in the fall-winter timeframe, to where the first review is of the fiscal forecasts. That tells you how much funding we have overall. So for example, you saw before you made your adjustments to the rates that the wastewater treatment plant actually was going to be in the negative, and that kind of informs you of your available resources as you start to think about goals and policies that you will be adopting as part of the financial plan. So the forecasts that we present are for all the major operating funds, which are the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund. From there, we go to community input. Part of that can be a survey and workshops that are being held. Based on community input, you as the City Council set goals that we then utilize to actually prepare the financial plan or the operating and the capital improvement program plans. You held, as part of this process, on February 26th, your goal-setting session, and those are all included in the budget. You also, and this is something that's a little bit Solvang specific, Buellton does something similar, but it's not something every jurisdiction does. But you do have a grant funding program, which has varied from over time and has expanded and contracted. The grant funding policy that you had adopted, and which also was adopted for the prior financial plan, was that you were going to focus on only nonprofits that provide humanitarian services with specific focus on senior services. So given that grant program, we open up an application process within a certain time frame when people or eligible organizations can apply. And all of that is presented to you as part of the preliminary financial plan. So preliminary financial plan is presented about a month ahead of the time frame when you are asked to review the adopted budget. At that point, we ask you for all of your policy direction, for recommended changes, and we incorporate those into the final budget product that's presented to you in the month of June, as the budget must be adopted before July 1st in order for us to continue to spend funds. So that's the 2-year financial plan process. The second year varies from this process by the fact that it's a supplemental budget. So we don't go through the restart of rethinking. We kind of stay on that path. We continue working on the goals that you have adopted. So next year, there won't be the council goal setting session. There will be some focus on just reviewing the trends. We'll see how the revenues are doing, if there needs to be any modification in terms of funding. For example, if we hit a significant recession, we might have to rethink things. We will also be reviewing the next year's CIP per the general plan update, which will be adopted this year. So that will be the only significant element that will be happening with the supplemental budget. Now, we also present to you quarterly financial reports where we report on progress on revenues and expenditures every quarter. The budget during this year, for last year's document, we received the first ever for City of Solvang Distinguished Budget Presentation Award by the Government Fiscal Officers Association, which is a national association for United States and Canada. So Just once again, presenting to you the numbers. Please let me know if you have any further questions with this chart here. The entire report is included in your packet. The changes have been made to the document that you had adopted or taken actions on at the June 27th meeting. So this is a final adopted budget as per your adopted resolution. So here you will see that the net change in financial position, and it's really because of the CAP that we're going to be drawing on almost $5 million in the overall budget, with a draw on general fund of $1.7 million. This is the summary of funding expenditures that are programmed for the capital improvement program funding by fund for each year. We do our planning forward for the CAP, so you will see that if the city was continuing to fund the CIP as planned, this is what would be required. Of course, every 2 years we reset and we look and prioritize and see what kind of funding is available. This here shows the comparison from year to year of operating contracts over $35,000 a year threshold. You'll see that there was one error that was verbally corrected at the June 27th hearing, where I believe the Market and Visitor Center was shown at $600,000, so that has been brought down to properly be reflected. This chart here, a little bit small, but this is the final adopted grant funding that you have awarded as part of the current financial plan. So it's a total of $463,000, which includes certain projects that are one-time. Some of the larger expenditures here are really a couple of one-time community projects that have long life, 20 to 30 years, which was the Theater Fest, and then, of course, the Solvang Senior Center. So that is not something that you would be seeing as a request coming to you as part of every 2-year financial plan development. Those are really kind of the 2 facilities that we have that are maintained by the community, and those capital projects were funded completely by donations with a little bit of help from the city. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions of the staff report? Go ahead.
Excuse me.
Mr. Infante.
Thank you. One of the things that I specifically requested was to see all of the funding that we had authorized added into the budget, which you've got over here on page 278, except that it seems to be missing the $2,500 for the Therapeutic Writing Center and the $2,500 for June 19th. So there's about a $5,000 omission in that total.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
On page 278,
Correct.
it lists all of the one-time discretionary grant funding requests that were approved.
Yes.
2 of them are missing. The Therapeutic Writing Program for $2,500 and Juneteenth for $2,500.
So the way this document is not going to be updated every time the council approves a budget adjustment. This document is your adopted budget as of the time you adopted it, which was on June 27th. Your motion on June 27th said adopt the budget as presented with modifications made at that meeting. At that meeting, you made a number of modifications which are shown here on page 278. The document stays as such adopted budget throughout the time until a new budget is adopted. What we can do is when you adopt a budget adjustment, we obviously update our internal records, and then, for example, at mid-year, which is what we did last year, we can show you all the progress of changes from the original budget to any further amendments that you have made, because there will be instances likely to where we'll be coming to you here and there with some requests for budget adjustments throughout the fiscal year. And that is a very typical, extremely typical process for
But the request
municipality.
was to see the budget with all of the funding requests that we had approved put into it. Moving
Well,
back to page 277. You've got the operating contracts over 35,000, you've got code enforcement at 40,000. That doesn't include what we already are asking for, which was the additional code enforcement, the part-time that was gonna be added into that, right? That was 40,000 is for the current code enforcement contract, but not the additional.
The additional funding that you authorized was approved as part-time positions.
But that's not in here.
No, it's not, because it's not a contract.
Okay. How about the tree management contract at 113,000?
It was budgeted at 106,950, looks like.
We just talked about $120,000 for it, and that's been proposed, and it's 113,000.
It is something that we would have to manage within the budget of any other maintenance for parks and streets.
What about the facilities program assessment and master plan of 84,000, 85,000 if you round it up? That's not in here, that's the contract. I understand we just approved it, but that was what's been proposed in here. So we're missing 85,000 out of this budget, right?
So these are, the criteria for this table is limited to operating contracts, which is basically contracts that sort of supplement the work that otherwise staff would be doing, and it's also limited to contracts of 35,000 or more, which corresponds to a threshold in the purchasing policy of where we kind of start looking at competitive bidding. So that's how this chart is created. It doesn't encompass every single contract is still here with us in the city. It doesn't include contracts that are part of the capital improvement program, which are one-time contracts. So that's why it wasn't here. This chart was really meant to be informative, to describe what type of work we do, that's ongoing work, that's being done by a contractor.
Okay. I'd like to take you down to page 280 to explain something to me. This is the fund, year over year for different types of funding. And you've got the SYV T-bid. Okay, that's Fund 700 in the final on the right-hand column. And in year, what do we got, 2021, we have revenues of 375,000, expenditures of 309,000. Okay, so we don't make money off of this. We collect it and we send it off to San Ynez, Visit San Ynez Valley. We take a couple % as a cost of doing that for them. But then in the next 3 rows, you show expenditures in excess of revenues, and I don't think you can do that.
I am not recalling exactly what that was, but I did have an explanation from staff on that. I would be happy to get back to you with details.
I'd love to know, because that does not make any sense. If that is actually incurring, we have a problem.
It was for something that was reasonable. I think maybe it was a transfer of expenditure, just had to do with encumbrances and carryover of how funds fall from year to year. But yeah, I would say the 3 years like that probably doesn't make sense as far as just looking at future forecast. So I'll come back to you on that. I'll take a look at it.
Okay, so let me take you down to page 281. So we're looking now at budgets and forecasts. We've got forecasts out 2022, 2023, and 23-24, and so on and so forth. And we look down under expenditures, and there's a line called tourism that shows $603,000 for 22-23. And then in 23-24, it's 553, 564, so on and so forth. That doesn't seem to match the numbers I saw up above. if I'm not mistaken, didn't you have tourism up here at, let me go find that again. Yeah, good, I lost it. Tourism, yeah, you've got 602,000 in, I apologize, it does match. And 552 in the next year. What that didn't match was, okay, go to the next page. Well, the next page is really confusing. 282. And you see marketing and tourism, and now it's 787 for that year and 759 for the following year. So the numbers don't quite match in tourism.
So I would say that tourism is, as far as classifications in our financial system, which is something that was implemented in 2012, is probably, yes, a confusing terminology because, and we haven't gone through any kind of process of chart accounts cleanup. So we are following historic record for how we place our expenditures for budget and for our actuals when the bills come in. And there is a reason for doing that because you don't want to change your accounting practice frequently unless you're doing a comprehensive refresh. So you want to see what you saw last year kind of matching through the accounting system with what's happening in the current and the future year, and staff is also trained to do it in such a manner. So when you see tourism rolled up at 602,500, for example, that's how our financial system is set up, to where it says, well, these things fall into tourism, but guess what? The Danish Days funding falls into this other category. So that's why you see these reports that are split out by the system itself matching, which matches the forecast, matches the, and I've gone through this full audit with staff, so I know that these are the correct numbers, but it's just how the cost is split. And yes, I agree that it's confusing because we call it tourism, and so one tourism may be a little bit different than the other tourism.
I will agree with you, it is confusing. And then to add to the confusion on this page, Public Works Department, Department Operating Expenditures, and the Utilities Department, Department Operating Expenditures are two identical graphs for two different organizations.
That would be an error in me putting together the staff report, but if we look at the budget itself, it would be correct, and I'll find you
What part of it would be correct?
page.
Public Works or Utilities?
Public Works. Because everything in
Yeah, it makes sense for Public Works and not
Public Works,
utilities, yeah.
Not utilities, because you're not going to do
Yeah,
park
parks,
maintenance and
utilities,
stormwater.
right.
Yeah.
But that, okay.
So if you look at page, for utilities, it will be page 374. That would show the correct expenditures for utilities. And for, yes, for public works, it's page 370.
Water supply, okay, there it is.
So I grabbed the same graph in preparation of the report twice.
Okay. I quit, I give up.
Yeah.
No more comments.
All right. I had a question or two, just wanted to clarify. Page 282. Our IT budget, on page 282, sorry. we're going from fiscal year 2021. Last year, adopted budget was 324,000 from 88,405. And then we've gone down a little bit for this coming one, 305 for,
So what you see in information technology, especially if you look at comparative of fiscal year 2021, is actually a change of accounting practice. We have pooled all of the IT expenditures into a specific fund, which we now kind of show under administration, managed by administration, but it's funded by various sources for all the operating programs. So it's funded by the general fund for all of our expenditures on the general fund, as well as water and wastewater.
okay, so that was where we did a reset.
Correct. We did
Okay.
do a reset on that one.
All right, because that really was a jump. And, let's see, I had.
I just want somebody to vote no so that we can have an excuse for being here tonight on something. And maybe it'll just be me the next one. I'll do that.
277. So again, the County of Santa Barbara law enforcement contract, what we budgeted was the 2.468,
Correct.
and that was what we initially thought we might be having to pay back on in June before we finished off our contract.
Correct. So, yes, that was what was proposed by the county, and obviously you have been updated in closed session on the progress forward.
Okay. And then the planning consultant, in that same graph, planning consultant for 100,000, we're not needing for this next couple of fiscal years.
So it wasn't displayed as planning consultant here because the plan is to have a planning manager. We're actively recruiting. There's a recruiter on that. I'm hoping, there's interview scheduled for the month of August. But obviously right now we don't have a planning manager on board yet. So that's why you saw a contract extension with the planning consultant for additional
Going
funding
forward.
to
Okay.
bridge that gap. But the funding between the position cost and the consultant cost will
Be a walk.
wash itself out.
Okay. And then we already got the explanation on the grinding and the tree management, so. We have to trust. 301. Trying to think, what did I guess that's all I had for right now. Any, Robert, you didn't have any?
I have none.
Okay. So that takes care of our questions. And final comments, yeah. Go out for public comment at this time.
Sexy
Nothing.
stuff. Come on, folks.
Yes, come on, this is budget stuff. Come on. All right. Bringing it back, there's no one out in Zoom, so for a motion, entertain a motion. There's no motion on this?
I wanted to vote
Just,
no. There's still one more.
just to receive the presentation, that's the recommendation. Okay. So moving on to our final item, number 10. Madam Clerk, please read that into the record.
Special Events Funding Policy Direction. Receive staff report and provide with policy direction for special events grant funding.
Thank you,
Staff
Council.
report.
This report and this item is in front of you to seek some clarification on how you would like to go about processing any requests for funding for special events. As I mentioned earlier, you don't have a standing policy at this point for funding of special events. Your policy is limited to humanitarian services with focus on senior services. There was a couple of, which was really sort of coming back from COVID, but historically, the city had always funded to some amount the Danish Days, the fireworks, and it's also come to my attention that the assistance for the 4th of July parade was actually not charged for the staff time for that. As we were coming out of COVID, you saw a couple of those requests kind of as grandfathered from the time before that came in front of you through the budget process. You did approve funding for the Danish Days and the 4th of July, but then there was a question from an organization for the Juneteenth, which really didn't have a process for reviewing that. You did, based on public comment, request for that item to be in front of you at the last council, and you did approve 2,500. So the question is, how would you like to treat such requests for any special events funding? Because there is others that have been asking for dollars as well, and since we haven't had this process, they were told that they would need to be paying for the expenditures. For example, one of the examples was the Santa Ynez Valley Pride event, who were looking to not, asking not to pay for the costs for the sheriff's service. That is the cost that's actually a cost that the city has to pass on to the sheriff's office, so the response was, no, we don't have such a funding or such a way of waiving those fees. We do have still a question with the Rotary, which would be another one, Rotary of Solvang, for the parade assistance. It was about $2,300 of staff time to assist with the parade from Public Works. And that is something that I actually wasn't aware until very recently that they didn't used to pay in the past, pre-COVID. So looking for your general direction, like how do you want to have a program of having a review of such requests? It's unknown how many events would be coming to you for funding, whether they would be coming to you for waiver fees or for grants. So just looking for some direction as to whether you want to establish some policies about that. If so, you can provide a general comment, and we'll come back to you with some policy recommendations going forward so that everybody is clear on what the city's process is or isn't and whether it's available for anybody to be able to ask for.
Any comments on this particular item?
No, any questions of the,
And questions?
I'll have comments
questions?
later.
No questions at this time. I've got comments.
Just wanted to confirm for the Rotary, the fees for staff providing traffic control. Is that 2,300 only the city staff costs at $100 an hour?
Correct.
So 23 hours and 28 minutes?
There was pretty much the entire maintenance division that was working it. And they helped with setup and takedown and traffic control.
Shoot, even Roger was working.
Roger was there too, but we don't charge. We don't charge Roger.
Yeah, Roger's free.
Included, not free.
I'm value added.
Yeah.
And he brought a helper with him. So we got double.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, his son showed up with him.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I'll just make a comment on that particular one. From what I remembered when I first started as a community resource deputy, the city at one time, it used to only be city staff that actually did the parade monitoring. And it was all compensated with, oh my gosh, now I'm drawing a blank on, it wasn't where you actually got paid, but you would get compensated at time and a half. Comp time. Compensated with comp time.
That is correct, and that is how our payroll system works under the MOU with the union. That's the agreement that if they work overtime, they get comp time, then they can use comp time. It still isn't free to the city. There is a cost with it.
Right.
And so what we charge here and what is included in the special events guide is based on a recent study that we completed for our cost allocation, and that's the cost of per hour employee in public works maintenance.
The sheriff time, though, that's separate from this particular,
The sheriff time is separate from this, so that's an additional bill. We process the contract through the city, we collect the money and pass it on to the county.
right.
Some of these, if I may, some of these events, again, as you suggested in your staff report, have been around for a long time, and are things that we all kind of depend on. The Danish Days, Yule Fest. Do we support Yule Fest as well? Because that's not in here, I believe.
So Yule Fest is completely city managed, so that's part of your core budget. That would be something that your tourism advisory committee works on and prepares the
Okay,
program.
so that's not listed as a special event that we pay for that way.
Correct, it's
Thank
basically
you.
a city
I didn't
event.
realize that.
It's part, yeah, there's $100,000
Parked in there for Yule Fest.
budgeted out for Yule Fest.
Well, that's that
specifically.
marketing and tourism thing that I keep questioning.
No, that was separate.
Oh,
Yule-
it's separate.
Separate Yule Fest.
I'll get up with this one of these
But
days.
yes, that was, because that was something that the city also did it. The only, the parades, I believe, were starting from the beginning of the year was 4th of July, Danish Days, and Yule Fest. Those are the only three parades the city would kind of take care of on those particular events. I'm of the mind that I know we are trying to have here the veterans and have a veterans parade. And to me, I would be remiss if I said I would not support us being a part of that for the veterans. The parade for the pride, I mean, that's an event that they want to bring. I would not be inclined to waive fees for anything of that particular event.
I agree. Yeah. Well, okay, so part of, I think, what we're asking is the staff to come up with a policy
Right.
that says, here are the 3 parades that we will do every year,
Or events.
or events. The one thing that I'd like to see in this is that we don't get after-the-fact requests. They have to be in advance, and they need to be 3 or 6 months. I think we've got a dependency whether there's a traffic or not, whether the duration on that is. But I'd like to see that put in. I don't know what else we need to really put in this policy. And I'll ask the rest of the council.
Yeah, I have comments.
I do too.
The only 2 events that I like, that I think city should be involved with are the 4th of July and Danish Days. In a perfect world, if I was king, if we're gonna spend tax dollars on things like Danish Days, or here's a better example. Every event that comes to this town puts heads in beds, okay? So, but it's bringing in tax dollars. I get it. I wanna have a car show. I wanna have a Frisbee exhibition somewhere in town. And I'm gonna charge money, and I'm gonna ask the city for $10,000. I'm like, well, first of all, that's great that you wanna have something fun, and you wanna have, help people or whatever you're gonna do. When did that become the taxpayer's responsibility? I would like to get rid of every single one of these things, except for Danish Days and 4th of July, and the ones that I would like, if it's that great for Solvang, then let's partner. Because people are asking us for money, we don't know what their other money sources are. Okay, So we don't know what they're spending, we don't know if they're making a profit, they don't know if they need our money to break even, because it's just asking for additional money from their other sources. So fine, for those two events, partner up. Let's work on this together, let's see where the money comes in, see where the money goes out, so maybe if we make a little extra, we get some of our tax dollars back. But I just don't think any of this stuff is the taxpayer's responsibility. Danish Days and 4th of July, I make exceptions for. I wish we did them a little bit differently, but those are the two that I'll continue to support. But I can't, there's so many great events out there that you either say yes to all of them or you say no, because it's not the taxpayer's responsibility to pay for things that brings a few people to Solvang. I just don't understand that, and I know I'm myopic about it, and I've talked about it for weeks, but I don't, we should be funding anything. That's my opinion.
Scrooge.
Maybe we will get a split vote. There is a reason for being here tonight.
There was.
I'm beating, and I'm not gonna use an analogy, but yes.
What, and so what
I'll
do
get
you?
calls from Chicago at
what-
midnight.
From PETA.
Yes.
What do you feel, you said you had some other, you had some ideas on that. What are your
Well, that's what
ideas?
the other idea is, would be to partner on events that are that important to Solvang. And make it, and let the taxpayers know this is why we're spending their money. Because I keep going back to this, it's not our money to spend, you know?
Yeah.
Especially when I'm getting redundant, talking about wastewater, talking about we're raising rates, and yet we're willing to spend money for things that, I'm sorry, I just don't think are on somebody who lives in Creekside's highest priority. However, I know where our bread is buttered. The residents, 99% of them know that if it weren't for hotels and heads in beds, we would not exist. So there's a balance there. But it's not their job to do that. I mean, let's get creative, let's do other things, but to bring money into the Solvang, but it's not the guy that works in Santa Barbara and coaches soccer on the weekends and just drives through town once every so often. That's not his gig, you know? But the fact that this is in a desirable place is 99% of because of what this town has become. So I do believe in supporting it. I just don't believe in spending money, or at least I believe in analyzing more which way money is spent. But as I said, I've seen it getting worse for the last few, not worse. I've seen it getting more demand for the city's tax dollars, and I just don't think that's our business to be here. We weren't elected to give money away.
All right. Thank you, Robert.
If I may chime in.
You may, go right ahead. I didn't see your hand raised.
All right, so, I was thinking that maybe it would help if we streamline the process. First of all, obviously not everybody's gonna get everything that they're asking, but at least we can have a process like the grant funding that we have, and that way everybody knows that's how you apply. They have a chance to open their books to show us what their funding comes, what they want their money for. And maybe at that time, they also have a chance to request for in-kind services, such as, waiving the city staff or whatever, and that way we get to review them all at the same time. And then we get to, make the decision of which ones we pick. I would say for special events, they would have to be historically and culturally significant to Solvang, and you can make it as both. Fest is historically significant because we've been having it for a long time, and that one is produced anyway. Danish Days, definitely. 4th of July, that is a civic event that is of, it's a federal holiday. So maybe you put the fact that they need to be related to federal holidays in a way, so that kind of filters, what events are applying.
That was another thought that I had, but thank you, Clau.
Yeah,
Jim, go ahead.
Special events funding policy direction, is that also going to include, on page 443, the policy on who we fund or who we take into consideration funding? For example, the city will prioritize funding for senior citizen services is one of those, and I'd like to make an addition to that. and have physically disadvantaged children.
Isn't that a difference between grants and events, though?
Well, that's what I.
We've already
Yes, so-
made priorities for what our grants are, and it is seniors.
Yeah, I'm just asking that we change it.
So it's not on the agenda today. This particular page or document was included as an example, just to show you what funding policy for any grants you have currently today.
Then I'd like to bring that back at some future date.
If that's the council's.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
No. Oh, wait, not right now?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good points, Councilman Thomas.
Yeah, because for what you were talking about, I was also thinking of adding veterans
I'd be open to that.
as well.
Yeah, and that's one I think we could all.
Yeah, I think limiting it to just one segment is a little too restrictive.
But I'd also like to suggest, I'm not going to be quite as tight-fisted as Mr. Clark. I think maybe we should have the capability to allow events to come here or encourage events to come here. And maybe what we do is more so than giving them money, is giving them marketing support. We've got a TAC, we've got a marketing contractor that brings people in. If there's an event, we ran the half marathon here. There was 1,800 people from 34 different states here. There's a lot of heads in beds here.
But it was also a for-profit event, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, we didn't pay for any of that. But I mean, the money
Right.
went to a charity, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But I don't think we put any money into it. I don't know what we did for the sheriffs. Did they take care of the sheriffs?
They take care of everything on that event.
Yeah.
It's a for-profit.
But that's a great event, and we should be able to market it. We should be able to put it on the website. We should be able to support those things. And so I'd kind of like to see the policy that says that we do that and are willing to do those kind of things. Giving them financial support would be questionable, but I think we still have to leave a little bit of latitude for those events that we deem at any one point in time might be worth the money.
There are always variables, and I totally agree with you.
Okay. Thought you wanted to vote no.
I might just for fun. Well, you get here at 9:30 and I can vote no then.
So as far as the packet on like page 440, if we wanted to make some corrections to the actual, wow,
I don't think we want to make corrections. We want to put something on a future agenda, wouldn't we?
yeah,
Mr. Mayor?
Correct.
yeah.
We need the staff to come up with a draft policy that we'll look at in a following
Yeah.
council meeting.
Yeah. Okay. I won't worry about the others. So, quick question though, on the fees that at $100 an hour. Is that always gonna be the case? It's gonna be 100 an hour? Is that?
It will
because it's-
be the case until a new cost allocation study is updated, at which point it will be based on whatever salaries are in place at that time. It's recommended that cities update cost allocation every couple of years.
Right. Well, with salaries, especially right now, would that have a tendency to then go up possibly from 100?
So if we would have a different cost allocation study, we would be updating all of our fees, and yes, there
More
would be an expected increase in the future as salaries rise.
Okay, yeah. And then what is I know that we have a $50 vendor fee for the special events that, what is the licensing fee for the city?
It has gone up to $55 now.
And that's only good for a year?
Correct.
Okay,
The business license.
yeah. Yeah, I was noticing because we waive the vendor fee if they have a business license already.
Correct. If somebody already has a business license for their business, then they don't need to pay the vendor fee.
Okay. All right.
There's no motion on this item.
There's no
so-
motion. I was just going to ask you, do you want to, we have nothing, take it out for public comment? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Michael Miller. I just wanted to mention that I didn't hear anything about tax breaks maybe for if somebody's going to be having an event, that could be a possibility, or some kind of maybe like sliding scale tax breaks, or just want to put it out there.
All right, thank you.
I think Councilman Clark is a libertarian, but I'm Dennis Beebe from Solvang. My addition to your request that staff come back with a draft policy is that, I'm an engineer by education and training, and I like options. I like to see options, and I like to see them evaluated, and then let the decision makers choose. So that's what I recommend when they come back with a recommended policy. And I lean towards Councilman Clark's, we shouldn't be funding everything. We shouldn't be funding half of everything. So go for it, and but look at various ways to approach it.
Thank you. You've already had one.
Okay.
Yeah, only get one, sir, sorry. Any other public comments? None out on Zoom. Bring it back, and council, you have direction, or city staff.
Yes, thank you for your direction. I've got what I needed on this item, and we'll come back to you with policy based on your
Alright.
comments.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 12. Any reports?
What?
Any AB 1, 2, 3, 4 reports?
Well, I have just one comment
Go ahead.
pertaining to what Mr. Beebe said, because he mentioned that I was a libertarian, and my daughter just graduated in political science from university, and she told me she was a libertarian, and I said, "Oh, you do drugs?" She says, "No, Dad." I said, "Well, then you're a Republican." That's all my comments.
I know. All right. Any final last words? Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned at 8:47. Thank you all for being here.